This brutal conflict between Russia and Ukraine has been raging for over 3 years. It's inflicted huge losses on both countries.
It's a stalemate, but with the Russians having the initiative. We've seen the pictures of the front lines and the French lines. The Russians continue to attack and they continue to take territory, although at extremely high cost. What the United States didn't expect was the kind of drones that are being used. So what they've been using are these first-person viewer drones that are flown by individuals. They may have just one small explosive, but they've been ubiquitous. The Ukrainians use about 20,000 a week.
Economically, Russia's been holding it together. Putin has essentially made Russia into a war economy. Russia's spending this year about 6% of its GDP on defense. The US last year spent about 3% of our GDP on it. Big money is going to the defense industry, which is really what's driving the economy at this point. A lot of people are making money. I mean, ordinary workers are making money. There are good defense jobs available. Putin has a good financial team that's avoided some of the economic shocks that you would have expected from a war and all the sanctions and everything. As a matter of fact, 2/3 of Russians in polls say that they have not personally suffered at all from the sanctions.
I think the support in Europe for Ukraine remains strong. And, European leaders have been stepping up. Starmer, Macron, Merz, and Tusk were just in Ukraine for the anniversary of the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. This was a very big deal for the Russians with their big parade on May 9th. And so to have the Europeans there in Ukraine, it sent European leaders a powerful message.
The Europeans have tried to step up, and they've done a lot. They've increased their defense spending. They're putting money into their industrial base. They are stepping up. The problem is that they started from such a low level.
Well, what's at stake is something that goes far beyond that. Our entire post-World War II order has rested on the fact that once a country is internationally recognized, a member of the United Nations, and where there's no territorial dispute, that another country cannot invade that country, seize, and attempt to annex the territory.
The funding has run out in the sense that it has all been committed, all of the $175 billion. But much of the equipment still has to be delivered. On the left there, what you see are the aid announcements. The blue is these USAI, the announcements for contracts, basically. And then the pink are the drawdowns. But then the green line, you can see, I think it's green, shows you what's being delivered. And because these deliveries will continue for a long time, they hold up for, really many months, and really we're going to be sending equipment for several years if the Trump administration does not cut it off. The Russian capacity to generate military power and to suffer shouldn't be underestimated. Now, whether they can bring that to bear politically is a question for Tom.
At the moment, Putin's approval is around 80 to 88%.
Right.
70, pardon?
80%?
80 to 88%. A lot of Western politicians would be happy for that. About 70% say that they support the military's activities in Ukraine. But at the same time, around 70 or 80% say they would favor a ceasefire and they would favor peace talks.
If Russia gets away with this, we enter in a much more dangerous period. And unfortunately, it's not just the Russians. We have the President of the United States talking about seizing the territory of a European country, namely Greenland. And I am quite sure that, or I think it's quite likely, that one of the reasons he thinks he can get away with Greenland is because he thinks Russia's going to get away with Ukrainian territory. Putin's going to get away with that.
He's heading toward whatever, several 100,000 soldiers dead and wounded. He's failed to take over Ukraine. He's made Russia more dependent than ever on China, which a lot of Russians are concerned about. He's facing two new and very strong NATO members, Finland and Sweden, which isn't good for Russia in the Baltic Sea. They got enough problems in the Black Sea. Now they got a problem in the Baltic Sea. Europe, in fits and starts, seems to be finding the political will to seriously confront Russia in one way or another. He's under a war crimes indictment. And with the minerals deal, the U.S. has made a long-term commitment to a Ukraine that would continue to exist as a sovereign state.
So, calls to action. Tom, you've been uncharacteristically quiet lately, so why don't you start?
Well, back to Russia. Someday there will be change in Russia. And one of the best ways to make sure that change is positive is to support Russian news media that are now working in exile. So these are outlets that I think are worth supporting, and you can support them individually. Some of you may have heard of Meduza. There's Moscow News, which actually operates in Russian, The Bell, and others. But there's also an organization that provides grants to many of these outlets that's called the Foundation for Democracy and Liberal Values. And it was founded by Zhana Nemtsova, who's the daughter of Boris Nemtsov, the Russian dissident figure who was assassinated in 2015.
Thank you, Tom. Mark.
Yeah, well, this is a very politically and socially engaged group. So what I am going to encourage you to do is, as you have conversations with your peers in the organizations that you serve on and with your political leaders, to emphasize how important it is for the flow of military equipment to continue. I made that point earlier, and saying that doesn't require additional funding, although that would be great. But I think in the current circumstances, that's not in the cards. But just continuing to let the equipment that we've already made arrangements for, to have that continue to flow to Ukraine, that's critical, because it allows Ukraine to hold out for many more months if there's no ceasefire or some sort of agreement to stop the fighting. They won't be overrun.
Okay, great. Peter.
Basically, I don't see much hope in influencing what's going to happen in the United States. I think for those who have contacts in Europe or live in Europe, the message to the Europeans has to be step up, because the United States has stepped back, possibly permanently.